Hey, it's Jared. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I'm using Apple Notes and why I decided to switch to it a while back. Now, Apple Notes has come a long way. It used to be fairly basic, but once Apple added Apple Pencil support and then started building out some additional features, and then most recently added Apple Intelligence, it's become quite a powerful tool, and I've been using it nonstop, having switched over from using Notion and a handful of other applications. And in another video, I'll talk about how I'm using Apple Reminders as well. So if you're interested in that and other productivity tips, make sure to click that subscribe button so you can be notified when I put out my next videos. Let's take a look at Apple Notes. We're going to look at it on the Mac. We'll look at it on the iPhone, the iPad mini, the iPad Pro. I have several Apple devices and I will use Apple Notes in different situations. And so I'll talk about how I'm using each device as well as we look at the devices, and I show you the way that I have Apple Notes set up so that I can keep all of my notes organized. Now, having come over from Notion and having databases and all sorts of crazy stuff set up and having my notes be all over the place, I thought I needed a simpler system, which is why I wanted to come back and try Apple Notes. I know that it is a simpler system and it has less features and less things that you can do with it than Notion, but that's what I was looking for, something more simple that got the job done, and Apple Notes has been doing just that. So let's take a look at Apple Notes. Apple Notes over on the left-hand side, I'm syncing everything to iCloud. I do also have some other email addresses that are connected in my Apple account, and so I could sync them to those, but I figured iCloud would be the easiest because it syncs well across Apple's entire platform. When I write a note and then immediately go and grab my phone, like as fast as I can open up my phone, the note is already there. So iCloud sync is just extremely fast. So I will throw all of my notes in the main notes folder. And then you can see I have all of these additional folders, but they have the gear next to them, which means they're smart folders. So I don't actually have any notes in these folders. These folders are simply displaying notes based on some criteria. And that's what I found is one of the most powerful features of Apple Notes is their smart filters and the ability for me to organize all of my notes into what look like folders without having to drag and drop all the time. Now, what I used to do was just have a whole bunch of folders in here, and I'd write a note, it would end up in notes, and I'd have to remember to drag it into the appropriate folder. And that just took time, and I would forget, and I'd go to one of those folders and the note wouldn't be there, or I'd forget about the note because it was hidden somewhere in the notes folder because I forgot to move it. And so that just became a process, and I was losing notes, never to see them again until I just happened to discover that note on accident. So I wanted a better way, and these smart folders with the filtering is what changed it for me. And I'll show you how to set those up here in a second. So you'll notice that I have all smart folders, and then I also have an archive one down here, which is a regular folder. And so if I don't want it to be in my notes folder anymore, it's a note that I'm not sure if I need, maybe I'm not ready to throw it in the trash can yet, but I want it out of my main notes folder, I'll put it down in the archive. Now, if we scroll down, you can see that I have a list of tags here, and I'm trying to keep this list from getting out of control. When I used to use Evernote back in the day, I think I added tags for everything possible. Now, tags are a way for you to get access to notes regardless of where they're at. So if you did have multiple folders, you could also tag notes that might belong in different folders. For example, if I had a journal entry that also had something to do with a project and a previous thought that I had logged, I could have a tag that would make it easy for me to find all of them. But since I'm using smart folders, I can do the same thing. So I have a bunch of tags down here, which makes it easy for me to find things that aren't in one of these main categories. So I see these as categories of notes, and then I have tags which are extended categories. That means that note could be in just one of those categories, or the note could be in a couple of different categories as well. And so tags are a great tool to use, but you have to show some restraint with tags. I definitely have to do that. If I'm going to add a tag, then I have to believe that I'm going to use that tag again, and I'm going to be writing more content in different notes and using that tag. So that way I don't just end up with a whole bunch of tags that are only attached to one single note. So that's the sidebar over here. We also have quick notes, which quick notes works really well, especially on the mobile devices like the iPad. You just swipe up from the corner and initiate a quick note. Or if you have the Apple Pencil, you can just tap on the screen and initiate a quick note. Then we have our entire list of notes, which is simply just sorted by date. And when I make an update to one of them, like for example, I updated this journal note here and it brought it all the way up to today. And the reason that I use the date as the title is so that I can remember when this journal entry was created. If I just gave this journal entry a title, then I'd struggle to know exactly what the date was. And so I use that format for titling my journal entries. And I'm trying to get back into journaling a little bit digitally. I have a physical book, a physical notebook that I like to journal in because I still just like to write. I don't want the distractions of a mobile device, even though the Apple Pencil's great and I really do love journaling digitally. I've just struggled to get back into it because I like being totally disconnected when I'm journaling. And so I'll take thoughts and ideas that I journal down on paper, and I'll bring those over into Apple Notes so that way I can sort them, tag them, and reference them later. So there's different ways to view your notes as well. You can view a list or you can view them by icon. I like viewing them by list. You simply click this button to create a new note. Then we have some different formatting options here, like changing the style of a text, checklists, adding a table, recording audio, making a link, locking a note, adding photos, Apple Intelligence, which we'll talk about in a minute, or sharing that note with someone else. So Apple Notes has a lot of features, and I like using it on the desktop when I'm more in work mode, when I'm at my computer and I'm making notes on a project or I'm writing an outline for a YouTube video or something like that. I'll use Apple Notes on the computer because then I have my keyboard and it's just a great experience there. Now, a lot of times I am mobile and I'm using my iPhone, and so when I open up my iPhone, and I go and open up Apple Notes, I have the same view. So I get all of my smart folders over here and all of my tags. And if I tap on any of these, I get access to all of my notes. And then I can click on one of those notes and then the note opens. So it's very easy for me to get access to everything that's in here, to hit plus and just add a new note and all of that good stuff. And then, of course, it's going to sync over almost immediately as I create a new note and start to add something. Like if I add some text and then hit done, it's only going to take a few seconds before it shows up on the computer, and that note is ready for me to edit over there. So on my phone, I'm typically capturing notes on the fly. So when I think of something, or maybe when I hear something in an audiobook I was listening to, or in a podcast I was listening to, I'll come in and just throw a note down really quick. And I don't really care too much about what I'm doing with that note. I may have a thought, and so I'll add something about that thought. And then as I start to build out this note, then I start thinking about the tags, like where is this going to go? Well, if it's a thought that I'm wanting to kind of process more later, I will use the tag thought. And then when I use that tag thought and hit done, I can go back and look at all of my thoughts and hey, here's that note. How did it magically appear down there? Well, because I used a tag, and these folders are smart folders. So that's the power of the way that I am utilizing Apple Notes, is that I can just throw my note in the main note folder. Doesn't matter because that's where all of the notes live. And then I can just add a tag to it. And so if this note was to develop into something that I was going to write an article or a blog entry on, I could add the article or blog or writing tag to it. I have a couple of different tags depending on what I'm going to be writing. And then when I hit done and go back and look at my folders and I go down to writing and I tap on that one, hey, there's the note. It's in that folder as well. So now this exists both in the writing and in the thoughts folder because it's a note that makes sense to be in two different places. But if I was just using basic folders, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd have to choose a folder for that note to be in. And that note might make more sense to be in a couple of different places so that when I want to go in and process some more thoughts, it's in that category. But then also when I'm ready to start going in and writing and I'm thinking I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write, it's in that folder as well, or that category, whatever you want to call them. And so if you look at all of the different smart folders I have set up, I have action items set up, and action items is notes that have something that I need to take action on right away. And I simply use the fire emoji hashtag for that to show up. So I just add the fire emoji hashtag to that note. So in our little test note that we had, if I open up that note. So we'll go and hit hashtag and then fire for the fire emoji and just hit the space bar and then hit done. And then if I go to my action items, that is there in the action items. And so when I'm done with this and it's no longer an action item because it's done, whatever, maybe it's a YouTube video that I needed to film that day, it's a note for a client or something like that, I'll just go ahead and delete that and then hit done. And then it's no longer in the action items folder, but it is still in the folders that it was existing in before with those two other tags that I was using. So I also have one for business where I'll put notes that are related to different business work projects, client projects, and stuff like that I'm working on. I'm currently reading a chapter of scripture from the Bible every day. So I'm making some notes on it and I'm 65 days into that. I've been scanning a lot of documents in as well, especially stuff that my kids bring home from school that I want to save, but I don't want a growing stack of papers. Like this one's pretty funny to me. Like my daughter wrote down things that she knows about her dad, like what color is his hair and his eyes, and his job is working, and he loves to eat taco meat, just the random things. Like these are funny things that I want to save and be able to look back on, but just collecting all of the papers and storing them somewhere, that just doesn't make sense. So I scanned that with the phone, and then I also added her name as a tag and /docs as a tag as well. /docs puts it in the docs folder, and then under her name, if I was to create a smart folder for her name, which is something I might actually do, is create a smart folder for each of my kids so that I can easily reference any notes that have to do with my kids and my wife. I think that would actually be a great idea, and I didn't think about that until now. But then I also have some other folders here, ideas. If I have an idea that pops into my head, I want to save that, and that's something that I might process out. I use the inbox quite often for notes that I just want to drop into somewhere, and I'm not really sure what to do with it yet. It doesn't really fit into any of these other categories, but it needs to go somewhere, and so I'll throw it into the inbox. And then journal's pretty self-explanatory. Projects are for personal projects that I'm working on, like this YouTube channel and other stuff like that will go into the projects folder, things around the house, stuff like that. My thoughts folder, we've already talked about, different thoughts. I may be watching videos on YouTube and an idea pops up that I want to think about later, and I'll put it in the thoughts section. Writing, we talked about already, and then of course YouTube for YouTube videos and all that good stuff. So this is a great way to organize all of this stuff, and having it sync across all of my devices is absolutely fantastic. Now, when I move over to the iPad mini, which is a device I carry with me quite often because it's so mobile. The iPad Pro, I know this is like a lot of Apple devices, but the iPad mini is fantastic for just quick entry and having access to all of my stuff. So if the screen is off on the newest iPad mini, this is the iPad mini 7, and then this also works this way on the iPad Pro as well. If I just tap on the screen, it opens up a quick note. I didn't have to unlock the screen on my device or anything. It just opens up a quick note, and I can start writing a note. Very easy. And I have that handwriting refinement turned on that makes my chicken scratch look a little bit better. Still very much like chicken scratch, but nonetheless, it tries to improve it a little bit and make it a little bit more legible. If I'm done with that, I could just simply hit the lock button on the iPad and turn it back off. If I open up the iPad mini, I could go in and see my handwritten note that I just added, and I could categorize it. I could pretty much do anything that I wanted. I can even type in here. One of the things that I will make sure to do later is come back and add tags to this so that it can go in the appropriate smart folder. So how do you set up a smart folder? Well, you can do that on any device. Let's take a look at the Mac. All we have to do to set up a smart folder is click on New Folder and then give that folder a title. So let's just call this Smart Folder. So we'll just type in. Then I'm going to click Make into Smart Folder, and you see all these other options pop up, and it might be a little overwhelming, but it's pretty easy to understand. Now, include notes matching all means that any criteria that I set down here, the only way that that note is going to show up in our new smart folder is if it matches all of the criteria. We can set it to any, and so long as one of these items matches, it will show up in the smart folder. So say, for example, I wanted, and the tag has to be article. Now I have a tag and all selected. Now I can also choose all selected, any tag, or untagged notes. And this is how I have my inbox set up. Notes that don't have any tags are going to show up in my inbox. And so that's how I know that a note hasn't really been processed, because if I haven't added a tag to it, it's going to show up in the inbox until I go through and clean those up by adding tags to them, which then removes them from the inbox. So for our smart folder here, if I wanted anything with the tag of article to show up, this is all I would have to do. Now, if I wanted it to not only have the tag of article, but it also had to be a doc, I would select both of these. And with all selected, it means that the only items that are going to show up, the only notes that will show up, have to have both articles and docs. Now, if I wanted it to show up if it only had one of those tags, either one, then I would choose any selected. If I went down and chose any tag, then it's going to show any note that has a tag. So for my setup, that doesn't make any sense. I would want it to be any selected, and then I would want it to be article and docs. And then I can add more criteria as well. Not only just tags, but I could choose date created, date edited, whether it's shared, if it's mentioning somebody else, if there's checklists in it. This is a good one if you want to use Apple Notes for checklists or for to-do lists. You can have a special smart folder over here for lists, and it's only going to show notes that have checklists in it, which super cool feature that you can do that. Attachments, that's also a good one. I could use that instead of the tag docs. If I don't want to use the tag docs, I could just use attachments, because anything that has an attachment is probably a document and could go in my docs folder. We can also set it to notes that exist in a certain folder, which doesn't really work for me because I'm only using the main notes folder and I have an archive folder, and that's about it. We can have it show all quick notes, but all quick notes already show up in the top. So I know there's other reasons that you might use that. It's great that it's here, but not super useful for me. Also pinned notes and locked notes as well. So there's a lot of additional criteria that you can use here to customize how notes will show up in these different smart folders. And you could get as creative as you want with these, or just be as simple as you want as well. Now, you can see that I have, and a couple of them aren't showing up because for whatever reason, they haven't synced over on this Mac, even though they've been there for months. But under Docs and Journal, there should be an emoji there. Now, why isn't there an emoji there? And how do you get an emoji there? Well, the easiest way to do that is on a tablet, because you have emojis built right into the keyboard. Of course, you can do that on the Mac as well by pulling up the emoji keyboard, but I find it a lot easier just to do that on this device. So let's go ahead and tap on that little icon and hit Edit Smart Folder, and then come down here and tap on emoji. So you might hit space and then go to an emoji and find an emoji that you want to use, and all you have to do is add that emoji and hit done, and then you'll see that it now shows up in the name, and that should sync over to all of your other devices. For whatever reason, on this particular Mac, it's just not updating a couple of the emojis that I set weeks ago on this device, but that's fine. It shows up pretty much everywhere else. So I'll just go ahead and fix this because I don't want to have that showing up. But all I did really was just add emojis just to make these stand out a little bit more. And I like the emojis. It just makes it easier for me to visualize all of those different smart folders much faster than just reading down the list. It differentiates them a little bit better. So lastly, I often use my iPad Pro for notes as well. And so we'll go ahead and open up that and open up notes here. There's a couple of different ways that I tend to use the iPad Pro. Now, just to make it easier to see, I'm going to go ahead and pop it off here and set it down flat so that you can see the screen a bit better. Now, right here, I have a lot more screen real estate. I can see all of my folders, I can see all of my notes, and I have enough room here for notes as well. I can maximize this and go full size, which is really nice. And so it's nice because there's just a lot more screen real estate on a big iPad like this. Now, one thing that I like to do is use split screen. And so when I am using the Bible app and making notes, I want to have the split screen open so that I can reference something. So whether this is a web browser or a Kindle book or something like that, and then you have your Apple Notes opened over here, it's great to split screen these apps. And I have it set with a shortcut. So all I have to do is tap this, and it's just going to go ahead and open both of these. So how did I set that up? Well, you can go and open your Shortcuts app. So we'll tap on Shortcuts, and you can see here I have the Bible plus Notes shortcut that I've created. Now, if you want to create your own version of that, all you have to do is go over into the gallery and then just type in split into the search and choose split screen apps. and then hit setup shortcut. And it's going to say configure the shortcut. What's the first app? You might go and type in notes to have notes show up, or I'm right-handed, so I actually would want the notes app on the right-hand side. So the first app, let's go ahead and put Kindle in there and then hit next. And then the second app we would want to be notes. And so I'll go ahead and hit notes and then hit add shortcut. So now if I go back to all of my shortcuts, you can see I've got one called Splitscreen 2 apps. Well, I don't want that. I want it to have an actual name. So let's go ahead and rename this. So just tap on that little down icon and hit rename. We'll delete this and I'll put Kindle and then plus notes. Done. And then back. And you can see it says Kindle plus notes. Of course, I could change the color. I can change the icon and all of that stuff too to customize this shortcut. So now all I have to do is just tap on that and it will open these up. Well, if I want to add an icon to my home screen, all I have to do to make that happen is tap on this icon and hit add to home screen. And then it's going to allow me to customize this. So I might choose the icon, change the color, what have you. I can choose the symbol down here and then hit add. And then when I go back, you can see that it's here. Now all I have to do is tap on that icon and it will open up Kindle and the Notes app. And I could be reading a book and making notes over on the right-hand side, either handwritten notes, or if I have it attached to a keyboard, I could just be typing in those notes. This is a great feature that makes it really fast for me to get into a note and also have it side by side with another app. I could slide this around and make the app a little bit wider or more narrow depending on what I want, which is great. And so this is just another great way to use Apple Notes. Lastly, let's take a look at some of the Apple Intelligence features that are built in. Now we have the Apple Intelligence icon right up here, which gives us the ability to use Apple Intelligence to proofread something, which means it's going to read through it and look and let us know if there are any grammatical errors, any spelling errors, anything that it can change. We can have it rewrite the item as well. So you can select a sentence, a paragraph, or the whole body of text and ask it to rewrite it, and it will go and try to make it sound better. Sometimes I think it makes it sound a little bit like AI wrote it, and it loses a little bit of the essence of the way that I would write. But there are times in which what I wrote is not super intelligible. What was coming out of my mouth was just a garbled mess. And so I end up using the rewrite feature, even if it's just to help me get an idea of what I should have written, or maybe reword that a little bit differently. And then I'll go in and adjust it so that it still sounds like it came from me. Now, we can also choose whether we want that rewrite to be friendly, professional, or concise. So let's just take a look at what that looks like. Let's select this box here, and you can see Writing Tools shows up here. That's the same as that icon. So if I tap on Writing Tools, you can see that it will rewrite it. Let's just choose Rewrite and see what it does. Develop the most informative and user-friendly course website tailored specifically for solopreneurs and small business owners. So that's not bad. I like it. It's a little bit longer than what I wrote, but if I don't like that, I can hit revert and it will convert back again. If I choose Writing Tools, I can also choose Concise to make a large body of text much smaller. I use this quite often when I have a thought that I've fleshed out and it's too long to post to Twitter or to other short form platforms. I use that to take my thoughts that I couldn't figure out how to make shorter and have it make that more concise. It's pretty great. Now I can also select a body of text and ask it to give me a summary, to identify the key points, to create a list, or to put data in a table, which is super useful and something that I use quite often. So to give you an example, here's some test results that I had from a recent laptop comparison. So let's select all of these. We'll just go ahead and do that and then tap on Writing Tools and hit Table and see what it does. It's going to go ahead and analyze all of that. And look what it did. It actually built me a table, and that makes sense. It has the benchmark type over here. It has the M3 chip, the M4 chip, and the same information that I added and then what the difference is. And it's in a table. So that's actually pretty fantastic that it was able to take simple bullet points that I created and turn that into a table. So Apple Intelligence in Apple Notes is pretty useful, and it's one of the main reasons why I keep using Apple Notes. The Apple Intelligence features I find myself using multiple times every day, whether it's to take some thought that I have and make it a little bit more intelligible, or to take data and put it into a table like that. Apple Intelligence is adding a ton of value to my Apple Notes experience. So that's going to do it for this video on how I'm using Apple Notes to be more productive on all of my Apple devices. I hope that you learned something from this video, and if you're interested, sign up for my Apple productivity course, which shows you everything that I do and how I set up all of my devices and utilize them on a daily basis to be more productive. The link for that's down in the description below. And I've also included some links to some different items that I use to be more productive, such as this paper-like grip for my Apple Pencil, some of the cases that I use on my devices, and other stuff that I find useful that improves my overall Apple experience across my devices. But that's it for me. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you back in another one soon. Take care.